Good morning. It's what is this? It's Wednesday, April 9th, 2025 in House Transportation, and we have our JFO, Logan Newberry. We're walking through the financial, at least getting us a little bit of update and piece on the miscellaneous DMV from a financial perspective. We had the walkthrough with Ledge Council. Bill is sort of still out there. We're going through our education piece with the DMV. They've got a huge seminar here for us for the next couple hours after Logan, but we're going to have the financial aspect and estimates of the miscellaneous DMV as it came over from the Senate this morning. So good morning, thanks for joining us, and I'll pass it over to you.
Great. For the record, Logan Newberry with the Joint Fiscal Office. We'll share this fiscal note. It'll also be on your committee page or on the bill page on the General Assembly website. Perfect. So S123, the miscellaneous DMV bill, as passed by the Senate. Starting at the top there, fiscal impact. There's about 8 sections of the bill that carry fiscal impact. In total, estimated to reduce key fund revenues by approximately $353,000 in FY26. And then a smaller but indeterminate amount in FY27 and beyond. And we'll get to why that is in a moment. So walking through the sections of the bill that have a fiscal impact. The first, within sections 5, 8, and 9, there is a proposal to exempt fees for children or for people, I guess, individuals in essentially foster care with the Departments of Children and Families. You probably heard about this exemption. So they currently are paying the same price that anyone else would. My understanding is that Department of Children and Families is currently paying that money. These sections would add language that would essentially say that any individuals under the care of this agency would have the fees waived for things such as their driver's license or non-driver identification cards, operator's cards, that sort of things. Fee for this section, the fiscal impact of this section, DCF estimates that they spend less than $15,000 a year annually. So it'd be a relatively minor reduction to the T fund of about $15,000. And then you would see the same essentially reduction in spending from the DCF. Moving on.
We're good, I think.
Yeah. Section 6. This section is the proposed exemption from the EV infrastructure fee for state, county, or municipal vehicles. It would also exempt volunteer firefighting organizations or ambulances from the fee that we levied last year on EV vehicles, the infrastructure fee. So this section reduced T funds by approximately $29,000 in FY26. And then I make note that the revenue sort of reduction would grow in correlation with the adoption rate of EVs in the state fleet. So as the state buys more EVs for whatever their uses are, this sort of reduction could theoretically increase.
What happens on vehicles currently for municipalities, and is there a reduction rate discount?
Yeah, so
regular on their vehicles they buy, whether trucks or cars?
There's some exemptions and some fee reductions depending on if it's municipality or a state-owned vehicle or something like that. I would have to go back and look at the specifics. But we do generally give them sort of a different rate. Same with like volunteer vehicles, pay a lesser fee. I would have to go back and look at each specific instance of it, but there is usually some sort of.
Yeah, I think it might be nice just to know, maybe it's written somewhere that sort of says, here are discounts for municipalities and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think I could find that.
Could say, well, this is the same network. We're just applying it to a new fee that's been added.
Sure. Yeah. to find that.
Representative White?
Logan, just a quick question. So I'm reading your note, let's see. Exempt vehicles owned by volunteer fire departments, volunteer firefighting organizations, and organizations conducting rescue operations, so long as the vehicles are used solely for firefighting or rescue purposes and are plainly marked to indicate ownership. So, I mean, a volunteer firefighter is probably using his truck for firefighting and normal living. So, I mean, like going to the grocery store or whatever. So I'm just, it is, and I thought when we reviewed the MV bill, I wasn't aware that we were saying we're exempting firefighters whose vehicle is solely for firefighting. So is that accurate or?
Yeah, I guess I would have to go back and look at the language. My understanding is that the vehicle itself had to be used sort of solely for the purpose of firefighting or rescue.
Sorry, I think I
No,
know
please.
this. Yeah, the key from my understanding of language is it's owned by the department, it's owned by the municipality. If the volunteer fire department is organized in a way that they buy their own vehicles as opposed to the municipality, then they're owned and operated by an organization, not an individual, is the part where it says, this is owned by volunteer fire departments, volunteer firefighting and organizations conduct. So it has to be owned by the organization itself and owned by the municipality, not an
By an
individual.
individual, okay,
Because yes, there are bills that
Okay.
talk about individual
yeah,
owners. Correct, but not, this is for municipalities and fire departments themselves that buy the vehicles. And so if that helps.
that does, yeah, and I just hadn't seen that specificity in the actual DMV bill,
That is
so
definitely worth
that
looking
clarifies it, okay.
Well,
Or-
I hope that's what I thought it
Yeah.
said. I'm saying your point is very clear. We are not getting into individual they have not, I don't believe, proposed an individual exemption. It's for the municipalities. And what would like to see, or I think Representative Pouch is suggesting, let's see what we do today so that we can, when we make this decision for the committee, can we see what we do today for municipalities for discounts on registrations for what are currently probably, internal combustion engines, and then why, what we do today for them, this is saying nothing on EV. We have a discount structure in place now. We'd like to be able to see them side by side and compare them. I don't know what and I wouldn't ask the JFO to try to guess, but I'm not sure what the motivation to go completely eliminated versus the current discount. Perhaps it's an additional incentive. I don't know what the motivation behind the language is, but we'll ask that of somewhere else. But I would like to see current structure versus what's being proposed. I don't know if there's lots of discounts in the DMV, and I don't know if maybe they have to be the ones we ask, but lots of current discounts for municipalities, exemptions maybe, I don't.
I guess I don't know. I'd have to go back and look through the statute. I know there are some. I guess I don't know what all is included and what maybe isn't included as far as the fees that are levied on these vehicles.
For
So I have to-
background info, I think that might be helpful for the committee.
Yep.
I see some nod.
Yeah, I remember Damon did go through that, but for some reason I got like 84%, something like that, because that was the issue I had, is to make it succinct.
Yes.
With their discounts, but I want to say it's like they almost got an 84% discount, it was more of maybe a processing fee, the other 16%, but it was quite high, but yeah, Damien did bring that up, so when he comes back in, I could very easily bring it up. That statute, yeah. Yeah.
Other questions about this section or where, I'm sorry, where we're at? Not bad to get us out there.
Moving on to section 7. This is an exemption for a very specific subset of veterans. This is essentially for veterans who own a vehicle that was required with financial assistance from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and that have an accompanying copy of this approved VA form stating essentially that the vehicle that they own was purchased with help from this program. They would be exempt from essentially from all fees. They're currently exempt from a number of fees. This is expanding it to make them exempt from the EV infrastructure fee, and then the annual emissions fee, which is a $2 fee that is charged. So this is essentially just adding these two fees into the list of also fees that they're exempt from. And the number of vehicles that would qualify for the exemption are very small. I believe it's around 3 in the state. So this section will have a de minimis impact on the T fund revenues.
Makes you wonder, 3 vehicles, not to belittle them, but why are we doing policy around 3 vehicles?
Good point.
What?
Yeah.
I don't know, I put on myself, but like 3 vehicles were. But anyways,
Okay, moving on, section.
I don't have the answer to that question. If you'd like to ask Senator Westman, you can ask.
I don't, I think veterans pay for their veterans license plates right now on a regular vehicle.
Yeah, they
This
do.
is allowing, if they go through the US Department of Veterans Affairs to purchase an EV.
So I don't know all the specific details on it. There's apparently a program in which they can receive financial assistance from the US Department of Veterans Affairs to buy vehicles. In that case, those vehicles are exempt from, and I'd have to go back and look at everything they're exempt from, a section of fees that are normally levied on other vehicles. This is expanding it to include the added EV infrastructure fee, which I don't believe there are any EVs that qualify, but that might not be true. And then the $2 emissions fees. So essentially they were going in to register or do whatever with their vehicles. They'd have all their fees except for this $2 emissions fee exempt. So this is essentially just exempting
Okay, so
every.
I'm assuming, is this a federal requirement or a state law?
I guess I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll defer
that's
to
what
Ledge Council on
It
that.
seems like it might be a federal.
yeah,
I don't know. That's one thing we have to look.
I'm guessing this is a disabled veteran to get a benefit from the VA to help them purchase a vehicle.
Right.
And, you know, that's why there's only a few and, but we should find out exactly what it is.
I mean, I don't have, nothing clear, I don't have a problem with it, but just, you know, sometimes.
Yeah.
You get 3.
I've never heard of it before.
Yeah.
Okay, section 8. I think this is one of the larger sections as far as fiscal impacts go. So this section proposes to provide individuals receiving supplemental security income or social security disability income, or individuals with a disability as defined within our statute, with discounted fees for their operator's license or privilege card. So currently, like everyone else, they pay $39 if they got a 2-year driver's license, or $62 for a 4-year driver's license, and then they will have a replacement fee of $24. This section would reduce the fees for those individuals to $20. And then there would be a renewal fee of $20 every 4 years. Then it would also reduce the replacement fee to $10 instead of 20. Instead of 24, sorry. So this section, assuming all other variables are consistent, would have a reduction of approximately $309,000 transportation revenues annually. And this sort of this analysis assumes that qualifying individuals utilize the proposed fee reduction, and that there's no other like change in who getting a driver's license reduced fee.
Logan, what would you mean by, what does it mean? The analysis assumes they all qualify to utilize the proposed fee reduction. So they would have to certify in some way, or they have to.
No, so
Step, or that they
this is
wouldn't.
just saying that there could be a case in which some individuals receiving these supplemental security income or social security disabilities could not essentially receive a driver's license, couldn't drive their vehicle for whatever reason. This, I don't know what percentage of people receiving these would not be interested in receiving a driver's license. So this just assumes that sort of a consistent use of this fee. It's a proposed, or it's an estimation, not taking into account maybe all of the minutia that might go into individuals who receive all of these. You know, Social Security disability income has sort of a wide range of people who can receive that. This analysis is just assuming that people who do receive it and can get a driver's license are going to make use of it.
So of the 5.4% of Vermonters that are eligible, they don't all have driver's licenses.
They might not, I don't, it's
We don't have-
assuming
we don't
that the
have
5.4.
We don't have a number of people that are, like we heard the other day, that 87,000 licensed drivers over 70 years old. You can't tell me there's 83,000
Exactly,
SSI eligible. You can only tell me that 5.4%
Exactly.
population
without getting
is
into.
eligible, but you don't know whether they drive or currently hold a license or are applying for it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and this reduction doesn't exist today.
No, it does not
It's a
exist.
new reduction.
Yes, currently they're paying the same fee that anyone else would, the $39 for 2-year cards or the $62 for 4-year card.
Currently paying a full rate.
Correct.
Do we know, well, I guess that would be a Damien question. When he supplied that, he did supply that piece that said where the originating piece came from, who originated the request. Okay, I don't recall off the top of my head. Okay, that's not a question for you. I guess that is in our other document, so my bad. There, all right. Okay, questions on this? Anybody else? Okay, Representative Keyser?
Philosophically, I have an issue with doing such things to a certain class because of disadvantage, knowing that the system takes care, so to speak, of these people. I know it sounds like an ogre and it's very small money, but philosophically, I just think that if we provide assistance, that it's not the responsibility of the transportation fund to obligate and do more. I just think it's a different path. So just a personal opinion.
Also, I think there's no, I don't see anything as far as what your gross income is. I mean, there's people that get Social Security that make a lot of money. And they don't need, that's just regular Social Security income.
No.
No.
It's Social Security
Oh, it's
disability.
supplemental.
and
Yes.
supplemental.
So we need a little bit of definition around those, to just for background piece, doing, or that is not regular, okay, or do we not? I mean, I'm saying, I get what your question is.
I mean, people who are on Social Security disability income may also have a pension, and there's not, what I'm getting at is there's no income like low income, or that we usually have, programs that they get reduced things for. And somebody who's got Social Security disability may also receive a pension.
I don't think you can,
See, I
but yeah.
I thought, well, my only reason not to open up discussion is to make sure we do get to the end of it, but this is what we need to discuss, and I'm all for, we're gonna have discuss.
All right.
I thought we had heard during our legislative council piece that the specific ones were of a limited, in a more defined area, but, so I don't know for certain, but that's what I thought I heard in testimony. And I do want to have the discussion. I just want to make sure we get the sections and then we do, or we have, and I don't know how we balance that. We can go into this for a minute or two, but we'll have another discussion piece on each section. I just want to make sure everybody gets the background from Logan before that or during that. But Representative Burke, did you want to comment?
No.
You're good? Okay.
Okay, moving on.
That's my last part of that. Do we need clarification for the committee on who's eligible? It sounds to me like we do. Do we need to make sure what are those income numbers? We should know that if we're gonna make a policy decision about that, we should be comfortable with what those income numbers are. And I guess I would ask if some way we find that out or whatnot.
Where did this need arise from?
Who
Yes.
did this come from DMV?
Yeah, I don't, and I.
The side by
We do have this,
side
it does, the side by side, it says did come from the DMV.
DMV proposal. That's what it says.
And we just want to make sure we know, I'd like to know, or we'll know, what's the income levels on supplement security income and disability income, so we know who we might potentially be giving a discount to I don't know if that's you or if we have to go elsewhere for that.
We'll find that for you.
Okay, you got a second to do. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, section 9. This is another de minimis section. This would allow individuals using their My DMV account to generate a replacement learner's permit for the operation of a motorcycle at no charge. They're currently being charged $24 for replacement. This would allow it to be done online for free. And there's not many of these every year, so the impact this would have on revenue would be de minimis. Okay, section 12, license examinations waiver. So this it grants the commissioner the ability to waive the examination requirement for obtaining an operator's or junior operator's license when the applicant holds a chauffeur or operator's license in force at the time of application within 3 years or within 3 years prior in another jurisdiction where the examination is required, similar to the examination required in the state. So this would take the existing ability that the commissioner has to waive if someone already has a driver's license in another state, and it would add in the ability for them to waive the junior operator's license as well. Before it was just the operators and chauffeur license, maybe. This is expanding that to allow for this additional individuals, potentially that the commissioner may waive them from the requirements of the examination fee. This fiscal impact associated with this section would be de minimis as well, as there are not many of these either every year.
That's an interesting question.
Section.
Sorry.
Well, just
It's
be one,
funny,
it's
it's-
like, when does de minimis money become real money here?
These are
Taking my-
fairly de minimis. Take a few sections of de minimis.
Take quite a few de minimis.
De minimis. I put 15,000 annually, so it's pretty well below 15,000.
If you want to take those rounding errors and put them into my.
Yeah,
right. Split them up amongst.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's see, section 13, I believe. So I think you've maybe heard about this examination scheduling fee, so I won't go into all the specific details of it. This essentially says that that fee needs to be collected starting no later than July 1, 2026. And then, as we know, if they pay the scheduling fee and then come to their appointment, the fee is then put forward towards the next thing. So the only revenue potentially generated from this fee would be for people who don't show up, in which case they'd be forfeited. This is where we get into sort of at the very top where I mentioned that in FY27 and beyond, the fiscal impact would be smaller but indeterminate. So likely there will be some revenue generated from people not showing up to their scheduled appointments, and therefore they'll be forfeiting their fee, but it's kind of hard to determine how many people every year are actually going to not show up. I think also when requiring them to pay the fee, they'll be more incentivized to show up, which I think is sort of the intent of the policy. So there will likely cause some revenue generation into the T fund, but the exact amount is unknown. So at the very end, it says JFO cannot estimate the exact revenue generated by this fee and can only state that this section will likely have a positive impact on the transportation fund revenues. And then moving on to the last section.
Representative Burke?
Yeah, I just have a question about, sort of implied that people would pay that fee once they start to collect it electronically, people would pay that online, or could people send in a check to the department too?
It's a great question for DMV.
If they want to take it, then we have a phone a friend in the room.
Let me ask it
If
again.
they want to take it.
I can answer real fast, Andrew Collier, Commissioner DMV. So the way we are approaching this is, since majority of transactions are online or through credit card through our systems, that is the intent. We have, both myself and Matt have instructed the team to build some, I guess, off-roads, if you will, so people that don't have the means of paying online or will always have the ability to capture payment in another form for people that just don't have that.
I just wondered, because I mean, I believe there are some people who don't use credit cards and don't want to do anything online.
Absolutely, and that's something we always keep in mind is balancing how do we reach everyone. I know the majority of transactions, so we streamline it that way, but we make it very clear that we can accept other forms of payment or other avenues to get people in.
Thank you very much.
Okay, on to the last section. This is the study committee. This would create the purchase and use motor vehicle tax and inspections study committee. That would look at those things mentioned in the title, the purchase and use, and then as well as the inspections. There'd be 4 members, the commissioner or someone that they designate, and then 3 other individuals from the public, which I think they are listed in the bill. I don't have them listed here specifically. And then this section, they'd be provided compensation from monies appropriated to the Department of Motor Vehicles. So the fiscal impact with that is de minimis, very small quantity that they would be sort of reimbursed for that, compensated. But those are the 8 sections. Again, total approximately $353,000 in FY 26.
Okay. Oh, and look at that. Right on time, like you planned it. Thank you very much, Logan. We very much appreciate it. We got a little more info on the DMV bill as we transfer over back to going to DMV school. DMV 101 continues this morning. Matt Russo is going to shift up and take the seat and walk us through and educate us on a whole wide variety of DMV related pieces. So now we know some of the financial impact, and we need to know how they collect our money and how they go, well, subject by subject. So when you see gaps in the schedule over the next few weeks, we will add back in some of the discussions. And we'll also eventually go back to taking testimony on each of the sections of the miscellaneous DMV bill. But right now, the goal is to make sure we have the background that we need to understand the policy decisions we're going to make. And good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Should we call you professor for the next few weeks?
Students, a little bit.
Asking what he taught.
Pastry arts, food science.
Did you say pastry?
Pastry arts.
Well, I think we're enough for the floor. To work on some more.
Takes us me to the kitchen.
When you had such a noble
Haven't done anything since then.
profession, what are you doing? What are you doing this for when you had something so noble to do?
Been a long road.
Oh. Everybody loves pastry. It can be somewhere around the dentist. I do not understand this at all.
We've exhibited that behavior.
Goodness. While we're transitioning, the pastries makes me think of the donuts that you bring in, but then it makes me think of, some of the phone troubles we've had in here and on the floor, and I think it should be, we're having a rules, and then we should have a rules thing about any more of that, and they owe everyone something, and page something, everybody should we should make that a new house rule. Any phone infraction, you owe 150 and some things.
So, you know which one I'm connecting to?
You should have gotten a link from Matt Costick, so if you click on that, it'll bring you to a Zoom meeting instead, so we're not on wires anymore, we're all online.
For Wi-Fi.
Oh, the Vermont Public.
I usually have it all set up. There we go.
Yeah, for future reference, you don't ever want to look at me and ask for.
It's honest.
That's what we get from Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chair,
Yes.
FYI, at 10:30, I'm gonna step out for a press conference for a few minutes.
Pastry related.
I have to leave too.
Phone call at 10.
Well, at 10:30? And 10:30?
Yes.
Sounds like that's a great time for a little bit of a break.
That'd be great.
So just remind me and we'll bust it up, because we were here for the whole morning, so 10:30 would be halfway, that would be great.
Yeah.
Now, some would argue that DMV's a step up.
A much better place.
Sweet place. Depending on the courthouse, actually, yeah.
Watch out. Under what administration was that?
Under which administration?
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna go there.
You talk
Obama.
about chefs.
Obama.
It was Obama, yeah. What year was that?
It's late, 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting closer. I'm getting nervous about my computer updating.
Yeah, I know. I turned sounds off.
The old cars there.
Look at that.
There we go. All right.
Except for the redacted sections. I don't know what that is.
Does anybody want a printed copy? I have
If you have one,
It's-
take one. If you have one, I would take one. If not. I usually collects them too, I believe, but. For her, if you have one for her spot right there, she would take it. She won't, she'll be in and out. You know what I'm saying?
Right, registration, tax and title.
Maybe since you're gonna be spending so much time with us, you should tell us a little more about your background, now that we're getting started and,
Well, for the record, Matt,
do we, and all introduce ourselves to you, have we?
you want to,
We don't have-
everybody?
Not when we started back at the beginning, so, Matt Walker and I represent Swanton and Sheldon, so.
Tim Corcoran from Bennington.
Kate Valley from Shelburne. Molly Burke, Brattleboro. Chloe Tomlinson from Winooski.
Jim Casey, Hubbardton, Addison, Rutland one.
Chris Keyser, Rutland City.
Candace White, Waitsfield, Warren, Moortown, Facein, and Duxbury.
Ken Wells, Orleans County 3.
Phil Pouch, Heinsberg.
Nice to meet you all. We have Matt Russo, Deputy Commissioner for Vermont DMV, originally from the seacoast of Maine, moved here in 2010. Well, I'm a Vermonter now. All right, I also have some more handouts as we go through the slides, just you can kind of see what we're talking about. Registration, tax, title. So I'm sure we've all been exposed to registering our vehicles, titling our vehicles. and of course, paying tax.
This one here's.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe not.
You have this one here?
I don't, but I'll get.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I had them open up the archives. And
We're going to school here. Yeah.
Right, so I'll start with titling. The biggest change that we've had as far as registration and title is our title change. Happened July 1st, 2024. Requiring if you're gonna receive a title, we need a title for the vehicle or motorcycle, trailer. So we had several scenarios that came up in question because, as you know, Vermonters have vehicles that they've had stored in their barns. They have vehicles that they already had registered, not titled, and now all of a sudden they hear that we're requiring a title. So a bit of an uprising, thinking that what am I going to do now? I don't have a title. I don't have anything for this vehicle. So with that said, we came up with solutions for each of those situations. If you have a vehicle on your property, say in a barn, we run a check on NMVDIS, which is you want to look at this first page here. This is an NMVDIS report. And really what we're doing is checking to make sure that that is entitled in another jurisdiction. And if not, we'll just have you fill out an affidavit saying, I'm attesting that this vehicle isn't stolen. It doesn't happen. It's not titled in another jurisdiction. It protects both parties, and then we'll issue a title. Used vehicles that are in the possession of a dealer and already in dealer inventory prior to July 1st were acquired by the dealer knowing that they weren't going to need a title for that vehicle. And so in those situations, if they can prove that it was in their inventory prior to that date, a bill of sale or a registration is fine. We'll take that in order to produce a title. If your vehicle was already registered in Vermont prior to the change in legislation, we obviously have that information in our system. We know that it was registered to you. We still do a check of NMVDIS, but we have no issue issuing a title for that. And then registered out of state is probably the biggest one. And we've had not the most problems, but checks and balances. Checking NMVDIS, we obviously are going to see that there's probably a title on there from another jurisdiction. There are avenues for that. Bonding the title, taking out a bond for protection. And in most cases, there's no fraud intended. You've got a vehicle that you acquired years ago. It may have been titled in '88, hasn't been titled since. But we still want to make sure that we have some protection just in case.
These are usually restoration type things, is what you're saying? Like,
It can be, or if you've just moved out from out of state, or you've had a vehicle that, and you moved into Vermont and you've had that vehicle for years. Or you bought a vehicle from out of state that somebody else had in their barn.
Yeah, could you describe, we talked about this last year, the bonding requirement. That would be a vehicle that you've had acquired somehow and it doesn't show up on the NMVDIS report, but it still could be registered, and so you purchase a bond. And how long does that last? And
yep. So when you're bonding the vehicle, it needs to be bonded for 1.5 times the value of the vehicle. And when you lay out that situation to a customer, they're obviously like, I don't have that money. You're not paying the amount of 1.5 times the value of the vehicle. It depends on where you're getting the bond. So 10%, $100 for every 1,000. It depends on where you're getting it. You get the bond. You do get a brand on your title that shows that it's been branded with a bond.
well, and so once you pay that, you don't get the money back when you sell the car.
You don't get the money back.
It's to you bond it to get the title.
You're bonding it so that you can have the title, knowing that there may be a registration out there. It's possible. And there are many situations where, like if I'm selling a vehicle, I've lost the title, or I bought it without a title, you're probably not going to get that title back. And if you go into the DMV in Georgia or Florida, any other jurisdiction, they're not just going to hand out a title to you, not knowing that if it's actually your vehicle. And so in most cases, that's when we would bond it if we don't see that there's a title on Invitas.
About how many of these happen? You know,
I think it happened more frequently prior to the residency legislation. I don't see a lot of them anymore. They are approved by a supervisor, doing some research, checking to see if it's registered in another state. You have to prove that you've at least made an effort to reach out to the prior owner, and you can get that information from a DMV. The name, you probably have to do the more research to find out the address. It's obviously from DPPA. No state's going to give you that. So as long as you've made an effort and tried to reach the prior owner, we will bond it, but I don't see a lot of those anymore now that you have residency laws.
Representative Case?
Is the snowmobiles and ATVs and all that, that kind of.
So those are not listed. We don't report those to Navitas. So we wouldn't have a database to check. We do require, and I can show you a slide down a few slides later. We know which state's title, which state's no, for snowmobiles, ATVs, boats. If you're coming from a state that doesn't title them, we're not going to require a title, but we would ask for a registration or an MCO. A lot of times, if you're in a state that doesn't title them, you're going to register it and you're probably going to retain the MCO because you don't need it for anything. And in those cases, we would ask for the MCO or the registration, a copy of the registration to show proof. Really just to protect everybody. Example of a car that you may find in your barn, not in my barn. So NMVIDIS, National Motor Vehicle Title Information System. Vermont was certainly not the first, and we were not the last to join NMVIDIS. We were late to the show. And so prior to 2020, we would only accept we would accept a bill of sale, and we had nothing to reference it against. So you can imagine how urgent it was for us to join NMVIDIS, knowing that we had these vehicles coming into Vermont with no checks or balances. And of course, other states were urging us to join for that reason. Fraud prevention. Somebody buys a vehicle in mass law maybe says they owe tax for certain reasons, depending on their residency laws. If they're trying to skirt those, they're going to come. Previously, 2020, they would have come to Vermont with a bill of sale on a napkin, and that would have been sufficient. Since then, policy, procedures, laws have changed. We've tightened things up to try to skirt fraud. Consistency among states. Every state, with the exception of Hawaii, is currently a member of NMVIDIS. So if we're receiving a title from another state, there shouldn't be a reason that it's not listed in NMVIDIS. If we don't have it in NMVIDIS, we reach out to that state just to verify, hey, did you make a mistake? We've done it. For whatever reason, it gets skipped, missed, to verify that that is a valid title and that there's not another one that exists. We first joined in 2020, and because at that time we were not titling all vehicles, we would report registration numbers. I think there may be one other state, Rhode Island, I think maybe that reports registrations in place of a title, and that helps to show proof of ownership. Because if you're trying to check NMVIDIS for that reason, and there's nothing there, it just makes it more difficult to verify ownership. Also on that sheet, if you look, so this is what it would look like if you were to run your own report on NMVIDIS as a consumer. The top is going to show you all of your vehicle specifications. Title records is going to show you every title that's ever been issued for that vehicle. In this case, Washington, Wisconsin, Ohio. It's gonna list the mileage. So if you have somebody reporting their mileage at 34,000 and you see that a title was issued in Washington for 50 something thousand, the discrepancy, where did the 20,000 come from? And we do get notified of that. And we have hard stops and things built into the system to let us know. Junk salvage and insurance records is a hot topic with AMBA and Navitas. We, in the state of Vermont, do not use junk salvage and insurance for anything. Because every state, if you take insurance, for example, every state has different laws for what constitutes a junked vehicle or a salvaged vehicle and what percentage of the vehicle is damaged for a payout. So if a reporting agency reports that it's salvaged and then lists 25%, that's really not salvaged to the state of Vermont, and it can be rebuilt. So we're not willing to put a brand on it just yet. I think there are a lot of good details under that section that we could use in the future. But right now we're not using JSI as much, except for the junk brand. And then finally, theft records. Previously, we would manually do a check of NCIC. Vehicles that were listed stolen in NCIC, I think, have a retention of 5 years. And so you're really looking at stolen vehicles from the past 5 years. With the implementation of our new system, we run them through NICB, which is the National Insurance Crime Bureau. And those are records that have been there forever until somebody manually deletes that vehicle because it's been recovered. So now we have an even better system of checking to make sure that there are no stolen records at all. Of course, there are going to be some that pop up where we have to reach out to the enforcement in that state. New York pops up quite a bit, border state, where it'll show that it was stolen back in '88. We reach out to New York. New York's like, oh, that was recovered in '89. We just haven't taken it out yet. So it's another checks and balances. It's great to have. An example of title branding. Brands. If you look in your packet, it did include an instruction page. It has a list of all Navitas brands. It's like this. I equate Navitas to Carfax. Carfax has lots of commercials. And that's why everybody knows what Carfax is. They've got a little fox. And they're well recognized. I wish that Navitas had that same capability. It's overseen by the Department of Justice, and for whatever reason, they're not able to pay for advertising. But we do get a lot of customers that are like, "What's Navitas?" Because we're like, "Hey, we got a hit." And I'm like, "I don't know what's Navitas." If we had said we got a hit with Carfax, immediately you're going to know what it means. With Navitas, though, it's just not out there as much. Yes.
Is this something that consumers can use, or is this something specific to DMV personnel?
Nope. On our website, we have a listing of all parties that can produce a report for Navitas. You pay for it just like you would a Carfax report. You're just getting a lot more detailed information. Carfax, I don't want to say it's not the most reliable, but there could be some gaps. But Carfax is able to pull in Navitas information. And that's why we highlight it on our website, so that you're not buying a title that may be missing a brand. You just bought a vehicle, you paid a bunch of money for it, and all of a sudden you're coming to the DMV and they're like, hey, you got a salvage on there. We got to go through the rebuild process. Now you're spending even more money on that vehicle that you just paid tax on, had inspected. And so we try to advocate for checking Navitas before you buy a vehicle. But we have that on our website. We have links to AMBA to get as much communication out as we can. So salvage is one brand I brought up. This is a listing of all brands that can be used. Salt water damage. You have a flood on in an ocean state, saltwater in the vehicle is even worse than regular flood damage, which you may buy a vehicle knowing it's got some flood damage. They say, yeah, it's fine. We've inspected it. A year down the road, that electrical is going to be gone. You know, it may work for a little while, but not long term. So the point of having a brand on there is to notify you ahead of time, hey, this is what the damage is. Are you willing to buy it? And I'll tell you later on about the percentage off for purchase and use tax. But you do get a discount on tax if you do have a salvage vehicle or if it has a salvage brand on it. Quick report. We'll do that. All right, so on to registration and license plates. So I'll pass these around for you. We don't have the original plate because it's falling apart, but it's in protect. It's not paper, it's metal, it's thin metal painted. So the first plate's huge, it's heavy.
Yep. Yeah, that's what.
Cast iron, enamel, heavy.
Right there.
And they've gone through various stages. There was
leather.
Leather.
The first ones were leather.
How do you get final reading?
Oh, I don't know.
How do you get that final reading from Vermont Digger? They would love this stuff. But if we picture, show a little display. Yeah.
And there were a couple of years where they would stamp a place with the month and the year of
That
expiration.
final reading guy.
My first comment was, I cannot imagine how much money that would have cost if you were doing that now. Because they're not stickers that you can peel off, they're actual stamped plates, so you're issuing them every single year. For
Patty were here, that would be funny as hell. Butch.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Like some bush shot.
Through various stages, we've gone back and forth between having the plate size that you see now and the smaller plates.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Whoa.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Now you get more modern.
Being bulk.
Yep, on the back, there's a little sort of
Oh,
seam. No, isn't it cool?
Green light.
Yeah.
Look at the professor, it is.
Have a little orange in
I can't
there.
wait till the pastry part.
Like that.
The pastry demo coming later.
Look at this, it's good.
And then 58 was the first year that we started issuing.
Look at that. You're gonna want that one, buddy.
Look at that.
That was
That goes around.
the first
You better make
initial
sure that one
plate.
comes back all the way around.
But I won't be returning this one.
Please go ahead.
Get back that.
Representative Berg.
So I have a
Leave it
question.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah, with my name and my weight.
You don't have to turn in your old plates.
Like 5
Oh, that way, yeah.
Are you supposed to?
Have your weight up.
That's why it's survived.
Maybe other people want to hear this.
So there is something,
I'm sorry.
It's nice.
That's awesome.
it says that your plates need to be returned. We have no way of really knowing if you're returning your plates or not, because you could say that they were lost. People usually keep their plates and
Just
put them on the wall in the garage. or-
Plates we
yeah.
have hanging around.
Personalized. I wouldn't be getting rid of Matt if I had it.
Yes.
Yeah, check on the years, but it seems like every 10 years, maybe we did a redesign.
Roughly, yeah.
Turn around there and take a picture.
Yeah, I gotta move.
Oh, totally got it.
Gotta stand up, Matt.
I'll send that off to Butch, he'll like that.
Yeah.
I think it's nice with the house transportation artwork in the background.
excellent.
Stars.
Along with the Butch's first one that you had back there in the
Yeah.
paper one.
Oh, yeah.
That's it, our
Do you
former
have every
vice chair.
So I don't know about every year.
Every issue, yeah.
Probably,
That's the old Phil, I know. That's my man right there.
3 walls full of all the plates lined up throughout the years.
Over in
In the DMV, yeah, in the hallway.
So we could go.
You,
view
yeah,
them.
absolutely. I took these from there.
Field trip.
Yep.
I'm sorry, your question, I did not hear.
Plates.
Sorry.
Huh?
I didn't even hear your question, I'm
No,
sorry.
my question was, do you have to return your plate?
Oh.
And you said, but they have no way of checking. So how many of us have less than?
No, we changed that.
That's where you hang, I thought you were required to hang them in your barn.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I said in your garage or barn.
Cover up holes in your.
Yeah, we got that a couple years ago. You don't have to keep it, you can keep it plates, I'm pretty sure.
Make birdhouses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
A metal belt.
It's a cycle, it's the motorcycle license. plate.
That's cool.
All right. 87 was the first year that we started doing service plates. POW was the first. And I do have an example of those as well. I'll pass those around. I'll send all the service plates around. And these are just a handful of the many. I think we have 72 different types of plates. Probably.
Nice. Oh.
And if you look at the packet I handed around, there was a listing.
Yeah.
There's 72 different places.
72. And that might have been a few years ago, so I know that we just added one last session,
I
right?
don't know, what is exhibit? What's exhibit one?
So we have two, right, so it's kind of like an antique.
72.
Exhibit, and it's like exhibition.
Okay, all right.
So three.
Vehicles I can bring.
So
Exhibiting
Oh, no.
oh,
National Ski Patrol. There are 72 of these options? Is that what I heard?
72 plates total. And that includes motorcycle, conservation, motorcycle, all three conservations.
Is it getting a little out of hand or is this a good thing? Is this
Could
gonna
add
add
more.
more or lose us more?
It depends.
Oh, cool. And this is in support of Building Bright Future in Charleston?
Correct.
So if you
Schools.
make a donation, do you get this or it's just?
I forget, yeah, there's a percentage, just like conservation, it's a certain amount that goes to that. I don't know the percentages.
I know, I don't know. Okay.
The original one's gone.
It's in the.
I get it.
You're building Bright Future.
I don't know.
I think it's one year.
Is that Masons?
Yep.
It is?
What's the G?
Yeah, what's the G? That's a secret code.
Grand.
And then along with,
Yeah.
we have veterans and then we also have, specific veteran plates that you can apply for.
Do they all cost extra?
No, veteran plates do not cost extra. So it depends on what you're getting. So if it's a service plate, there's a one-time fee of $21. And then you just pay the regular registration fee after that.
For veterans, but for all these other ones and whatnot?
For the other ones, the veteran ones, there is no fee,
Okay.
Oh,
no extra fee at all.
So the extra to get the extra stickers is $21.
Nope, nope. So that's just for regular service plates like amateur ham radio, those kind of plates. Ski patrol,
That was $21.
$21, and that's a one-time fee, and that's actually, there's a listing right here. Next page,
Amateur ham radio.
amateur ham radio.
Oh, it's on this
Little, the,
special license plate application.
yeah.
Breaker one now.
You have your handle, and that's actually what you use as your plate number, is the handle.
Firefighters Association, Legion, National Guard. Flat feet.
These are examples of ours.
Exactly. Rotary. VFW.
What do you do with this?
So these are specific veteran plates. When we get your DD 214
National.
completed by the VA,
Yeah.
and you noted that you're applying for an Afghanistan plate, they're gonna check to make sure that you did serve in Afghanistan, and then we'll put the sticker on. So we do have blank plates just for that reason. If you are approved for the Korean War, you get the Korean sticker on there, which saves, because then you don't have to order separate plates for every single one.
So was it?
Yeah.
Was it the legislature that decided to add all these plates? Like, how do these plates get added?
Legislature.
Okay.
The one from, I think it was the Bronze Star, was approved last year.
Is there, and people love personalized, people that love it a lot. Is there downside to having 72 and not 92 or 104? I mean, what's the positive or negative of having?
I think it depends on the organization. It could be seen as supporting certain organizations as a pro, depending on how much you want to charge or what is legislated for to charge. Could be revenue. You see a lot in the paper, you'll see a lot of these other states passing legislation for putting an emoji on your plate. That's all revenue.
A couple years ago.
So you want to put a smiley face on there. There's a cost to it.
But in a situation like a larger state and 1 million people buy something, if they charge them $25 a whack or whatever it is, I don't know what they charge.
Right.
It's had a revenue opportunity, but we only have 600,000 people, our opportunity.
That's a fair point. I think that it'd be good to look at the vanity numbers, because vanity plates are, I used to have all the fees memorized. I don't, since we changed, I don't remember them, but I think it was 48 per year for vanity
Each year.
each year.
And what do the plates cost us? I definitely.
For a set, I think it's $6 or $5 something.
$48, I believe. Hold me on that, we're in that ball.
Yeah, go with that. Yeah.
Representative Burke, please.
Just a little bit of information on the vanity plate. One time we were, somebody just brought in the book of all the vanity plates requests that had been rejected.
Yes.
That was hysterical.
You have the list online, you have it all built into a system, so you can see everything.
Oh, they were-
Yeah,
What
pretty
what
wild.
people wanted and what was rejected because it was not appropriate.
Representative what?
Are vanity plates revenue gain for the state once the donation goes to whatever special interest group?
I believe so. And I'm not sure which percentage, but I believe that's goes into the fund.
Sure, I mean, a couple years ago, we passed it out of House, but I lost track of it. Before, we set up a process where an organization could spend the upfront money, pay for it,
Right.
it just had to get approved by the commissioner, and then they go ahead with it plate.
That was Peter Fagan.
Yeah, is that, wow, like, can any organization make their own plate now? Vanity plate, basically?
They can make the request. I'm not
And they
sure
pay for it?
exactly if they pay for it. Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, so that did pass. So organizations they can spend all the upfront money, do whatever. Get me, and then it has, can't be offensive or anything like that. So there is an avenue to do plates, yeah.
Okay, so veterans plates are a little more specific on what's required. You do need to fill out an application for the plate. At the bottom, there is a section for the VA to approve it and stamp it, sign off on it. And really, they're just checking your DD 214 to make sure that you are a veteran. Once we get that back, we can issue whichever plate you're applying for, just a regular veteran plate, a war specific plate. Onto VIN verifications. We used to do quite a bit more VIN verifications depending on what you're applying for. Specifically, we used to do VIN verifications for motorcycles that were 500 cc's or more. So we titled motorcycles that are 300 cc's or more. But if it was 500 or more, we would require VIN verification. I really can't speak to the reason for that. I think maybe because there was more fraud or more parts, stolen parts being added and applied to other motorcycles. Currently, we just do verifications on salvage vehicles. So if you have a salvage brand, which includes junk, collision, any of those brands, we require that you have a VIN verification, which is done in the state of Vermont by a police officer or anyone who is certified to do VIN verifications, which would include the DMV. If it's titled under bond, we require a VIN verification. Again, it's just for protection or making sure that there's no stolen parts. When you do a VIN verification, you are running a check of NCIC for fraud for stolen vehicles. The other one is for imported vehicles. The majority of those are going to come from Canada, being that we're right on the border. We're just looking for import documentation. And because it's coming from out of the country, just checking for a stolen. What is a salvage vehicle and can it be titled? Yes. So Vermont will title pretty much any salvage vehicle as long as it's had a valid inspection. It's had the specific parts fixed on the vehicle that caused the salvage brand. We require the valid inspection, which is through our AVIP system. And AVIP is available to the public. So if you say, hey, I had this done 2 years ago, I'd love to have a copy of the report, anybody can go on, put your VIN in and get your inspection report from whichever year it was. It shows up all listed.
So this isn't annual inspection here in Vermont. This is a special inspection.
Nope, this is, the AVIP system is every year, your annual inspection that you would get every year. It keeps it housed in a database online.
And multi-state?
No, just for the state of Vermont.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
So if you're purchasing a vehicle and you want to check to see if it was inspected, make sure that it passed, you can go online, put the VIN in and run the report and print it out. There's your verification. We did cover JSI information already. Salvage yards are required to report when a vehicle is junked. And I think that covers a lot of the fraud. Or say the police are out, they have a report of a stolen vehicle or a crime that occurred with that vehicle. As soon as that hits Nimbus, they're gonna get a ping to let them know that vehicle was recovered. And obviously they don't have a lot of time, but the hope is that they're gonna get there in time to get that vehicle for whatever reason the crime occurred. There are times when the vehicle's crushed prior to them getting there to inspect the vehicle. If we do receive a junk from a salvage yard in the state of Vermont, that is the only time that we destroy it and we don't retitle it. Because it's in the state of Vermont, we know that the vehicle is not going to be on the road again. They're crushing it. Vehicle tax, purchase and use or sales tax. And that's where we can start to dive into dealer appraisal as well, which I believe I included in your packet. As well as certification of tax exemption. So Vermont taxes vehicles that are being registered and going on the road at 6%. There are situations where we collect the tax, but it's not purchase and use tax. And the difference is that with purchase and use, we're looking for the valuation using JD Power. Sales tax, we're only taxing on the costs that or the amount that you paid for that vehicle. In this case, sales tax would be applied to snowmobiles, ATVs, and boats. So if you bought it for $10, we're going to tax you 6% on $10 because we can only tax you on the amount that you paid for it. When it comes to a pleasure vehicle, we're taxing you on the purchase price or the book value, whichever is higher, unless it's coming from a dealer. In that case, we would just tax you on the dealer price. If you're coming from, yep.
And is that like a certified dealer? I mean,
Certified dealer.
right, so if I sold a car to someone and said, here's what they pay, that doesn't count.
It doesn't, no, it would need to be on the purchase agreement or the bill of sale from the dealership.
So if you want to buy a snowmobile, an ATV or a boat, it's a sales tax you're paying. It's not
Paying sales tax.
Sales tax based on the value, whatever you bought it.
And up until.
Vehicles and whatnot is a purchase and use tax.
Correct.
Okay, is there exemptions to that purchase and use tax?
There are. Yep.
Is there a list of that or?
Yes, I think we're gonna.
Oh, all right,
I think we'll get there.
Okay,
I think it's on there.
Representative Burke?
I think I missed what you just said. So if I sell a car privately to somebody and I say they bought the car for $10,000 or something, is that what they're gonna pay the tax on? No.
No, so. And I can explain the reason for it. We do, if it's a private sale, we're gonna tax you on either the book value or the purchase price, whichever is higher. there have been situations where somebody will sell a vehicle and say, I paid $1 for it.
Yeah.
The minimum that we're gonna tax you on is 500.
Yeah.
No matter what. But if we went by just what the purchase price was, I have a strong feeling that the revenue would go down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Being that
So you just.
all of a sudden everyone's selling vehicles for
Look at the
$1.
book value, but not necessarily the condition of the car. I mean, so you might, so that would be.
Yes, so if you're paying, let's just say that we get the clean trade book value and it says it's $10,000 and you know full well the vehicle is not worth $10,000. And we do use the clean trade value. We don't use the high retail or the other end, low retail. We use the clean trade in value is what it would be worth if you traded it in. You do have the option to do a dealer appraisal and bring your vehicle to a certified dealer so they can appraise it.
And it's not even inspectable.
And that's the other situation we run into is registering a vehicle. You say you're like, it's worth it $100. That clearly shouldn't be on the road, and you're testing when you register it that it's roadworthy and it can be inspected. So we're looking for the vehicle to be roadworthy before you're going to pay the tax. So tax paid to another state, you're moving from out of state or you're purchasing the vehicle out of state. The majority of states are going to send Vermont the tax money, knowing that the person purchasing the vehicle is a resident of Vermont. Florida, for example, despite them being a resident, will oftentimes keep the tax for the state of Florida. And in those cases, as long as you can show proof the tax was paid at the time of purchase, we won't charge you the tax again when you come to Vermont.
So if I buy a car, I live in Florida, I'm a resident of Florida. I come to Vermont, buy a car, pay tax from the dealer. And then I go to Florida. Does Vermont say, hey, the tax is already paid and I don't have to pay it in Florida? Some states do and some states don't.
Correct. The dealer is probably going to send everything to Florida. Tax, everything that Florida is going to want. So, and that's the majority of the time is that the tax is sent to the state that the customer is residing in.
But Florida doesn't do that for us.
If you went to Florida and purchased a vehicle, they're gonna keep their tax money.
Why would we give it to them if they don't give it to us?
Florida is a small, is one example. The majority of states will send the tax to the residing state.
Is there federal legislation about that, or is that just most states cooperate and Florida does what they want?
It may be in legislation, there may be a reason for it, I'm not sure for Florida specifically.
So. Exactly.
Yes, please.
There are a lot of Florida license plates in my district. So how does that work? They are buying a car somewhere and they're Florida residents. So what, I'm just trying to understand where,
Sure.
what's Vermont getting out of that? Or are we incentivizing people to buy cars in Florida and then, that's,
No incentives to purchase anywhere else. Obviously, you have the freedom to choose where you're going to purchase your vehicle.
But if they buy a car in Florida and they pay the fee to Florida, that's it, they're done, or we don't,
We just need to know that you paid the tax on that
okay.
vehicle.
Yeah, well.
Just continue on Rep. Lally example. You buy and register the car in Florida, and then you come to Vermont. The only time there would be any tax, if you then register the car in Vermont,
Mhm.
you've already paid tax in Florida. So do you register the car for free in Vermont, or do you pay another?
We wouldn't tax you again on a vehicle that you've already paid tax on. If we can see that, and this is legislation that just passed a couple of years ago. If it used to be that you needed to show proof of 3 years of registration or a notarized document that showed that you paid the tax. As of a couple of years ago, we just need to see that you've registered the vehicle in the other state or proof that on the bill of sale that you paid tax to it. So if you're moving to Vermont from Florida and you show us your registration from Florida, it's assumed that you paid tax unless it's from a non-tax paying state.
Okay, and again, just to clarify, what Chair Walker said was automobiles are paying purchase and use tax, and other vehicles, boats, motorcycles are paying sales tax.
Motorcycles pay purchase and use. The only ones that pay sales tax are snowmobiles, ATVs, and boats.
Okay, thank you.
And
And they're both 6%?
6%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's just like one classification or another.
Exactly, different buckets. A big one that we get a lot are trailers, which are purchase and use, but you purchase it at Home Depot and they're charging you sales tax, not purchase and use. That is acceptable proof that you've already paid tax on that.
Now, if you buy that trailer and it pays sales tax, it doesn't get into transportation revenues then?
Correct. It goes to general fund.
It doesn't come to us.
Actually,
Yeah, no, it's general fund,
Oh,
yeah.
you're right.
General-
Coming somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, so how much money is that? That's a question.
So
Exactly.
so what you're saying is snowmobiles, ATVs and boats, although regulated and spent and for projects, et cetera, for all of those things come through transportation, but they're not contributing to transportation dollars.
trailers specifically or the other ones?
Or snowmobiles, ATVs and boat sales, where the sales aspects of those are not coming to transportation revenues.
You're on to something.
Really?
Well, I'm just saying, we do give, we do,
Another way that our piggy bank is rated.
well. I'm glad that we have all come to an agreement on that in the first few months, that we have, there are not a lot of champions of the transportation fund in the building, and our number one job is to be those champions of the funds, because we can't do anything if we don't have them. But anyway, it's interesting, I guess I knew it, but I
Just
just.
the middleman, we collect the tax and pass it on. It's for those vehicles.
Change that?
Can we change that?
Oh, you can change anything, right?
I know it's.
As long as you can get all of
At
your.
least out of this room. when
Yeah.
it's out of
I
this room.
know.
If your colleagues on the
That's what we
floor and
learned
those,
yesterday.
those people down in the basement.
You gotta start somewhere, right?
They don't like that one, Representative Keiser, do they?
Inadequacies.
Sorry,
All right, so tax credit.
this is why we're going through 101 here.
So if you have purchased a new vehicle and you've sold your previous vehicle or a vehicle that you had registered to you within 90 days, 3 months, you can use that as a tax credit. So I just sold a vehicle for 50 grand. I just purchased a new vehicle for 75. I'm only going to be taxed on that 25 grand that's left over because I've already paid the tax on 50 grand and I just sold the vehicle. So we're going to take that as a credit off of the purchase of your new vehicle. And if you're doing that after the fact, the 3 months can be before or after, there is a process for an after the fact refund that you can apply for, showing us that you sold that vehicle.
So would a certified dealer automatically do that if I went in and traded my car in and got a new car? The purchase and use tax, I would pay then to the dealer, but they would subtract the other amount.
Correct. They do all that for you.
But if I sold my car to someone else and went and bought a new car, I could still get that credit.
You would have the dealer list that right on the application that you sold it.
I'd be very interested to know, in more granular detail, what revenue for snowmobiles, ATVs, and particularly boats brings in sales tax, especially that category of boats. The reason I am curious about that, if anybody's interested, is we have had a lot of investment in our harbors, our wonderful harbors along Lake Champlain, which is being discovered as, the tremendous asset that it is. So there's a lot of investment. In my neck of the woods, we have a lot of Canadians who come down and they buy very large boats. And I'd just be curious to know the money trail, where that's going and how sizable it is, because I expect that it's something that might be increasing in the future. So I think there's an argument to be made for rethinking or making, proposing that some of these distinctions between sales and purchase and use be thought through again or relooked at because of the impact that they could have on our transportation fund. So
When I hear you say that, my mind goes into the trailers. Are trailers that go on the road required to be registered?
Yes.
You, at any size, if you put a trailer behind your vehicle, it's gotta have a registration.
Correct.
But you're not paying, that money is not a sale, purchase and use tax. You pay the sales tax on that trailer. I wonder if we should be collecting
Well, no,
the.
the registration would come to us.
Right, but I'm saying the sales tax when you bought it
Oh.
went into the general fund. Perhaps we should be collecting the purchase and use tax on the trailer at the time it's registered. Because if it enters the road, then this is just saying perhaps that means it's transportation related. You happen to run that trailer only on your off-road activities and you don't register it. We probably go along with that agriculture / logger exemption, but if it goes on the road, it's transportation related, perhaps on trailers, we should be collecting the purchase and use tax at the time of registering trailers instead of at the time of sale.
And the majority of those boats that are purchased are coming with a trailer. Almost all the time. So, yeah.
So I was thinking of the trailers behind all the contractors and
Okay, yeah.
landscapers vehicles, we're not getting that purchase and use. I was thinking that direction. You're talking about boat trailers. My mind didn't go there. I'm looking at Representative Casey and thinking about the contractor that's hauling a trailer that I had an assumption was supporting the road activity, and it's not. They're paying the 6%, but they're not supporting the road. And I guess I'm just realizing I had a perception that those trailers were paying for their use of the road. And they are through a registration fee, but they're not on the value of the trailer.
Yeah, we can definitely get those numbers for you.
I don't know if this is the thing, but I really had that separated. I wasn't thinking about the boat trailer, but I was thinking about all the trailers I see every day with all of the guys that, the people that, that Representative White.
Well, again, following up on Representative Lally's question about the boats. If you're a Canadian citizen, but you buy a boat to keep in Lake Champlain in a harbor in Vermont, are we able to capture any revenue from that? I mean, can they register it in Canada, but just bring it down to
Yep.
Vermont and
I
keep
do
it
have
here
that
for
on
the
the slide
summer?
coming
And
up, but the short answer is if it's gonna be in Vermont waters for more than 60 days, you have to get a validation. So show us proof that you have it registered in Canada and you would apply for a validation sticker so that you can keep it in Vermont waters for more than 60 days.
And is that what does that cost?
Vessel validation is the cost of the boat registration, depending on the length of the boat. So $31 for, I think it's under 16 feet, I think.
Okay,
And
so
then
it's
it goes
nothing
up
close to
incrementally.
purchasing, yeah, it's
There's no tax.
very nominal.
Representative
Yeah,
Welch?
I think we had testimony on this last year. And so if you're a New Hampshire resident, you bring your boat on vacation for a couple weeks here. You don't have to do anything. It's registered in New Hampshire. But if you come for 6 months, because you have a cottage here, you're supposed to get that validation.
Right.
So you have both New Hampshire and here, and same with Canada.
And we also have, we'll accept Coast Guard. If you're registered with the Coast Guard, there's documentation for that. We'll accept that as a registration as well. And you can get it validated here.
I think that's where, we're gonna, yes.
How would you know how long they've been here?
That's a great, I was thinking about that last night.
Yeah.
I was getting the slides ready.
Sorry. Whoops.
There are
Any
many Canadians who keep their boats here permanently
Mhm.
and just come down. So it's something worth looking into, I think.
Well, the interesting question about, on the boats, the trailers for contractors, the trailers for boats. We've heard about tires, and one of the suggested that some states are doing for revenue for transportation is a tax on tires. But we're paying sales tax on our tires, but that money is probably not likely coming to help support transportation at this point. So all those revenue opportunities, I like that everybody's thinking about. We need transportation revenue in order to continue to do transportation projects, no matter what scope they are. We're gonna, I know that people have some things that they need to do at 10:30. We're gonna take a 15-minute break and let them go do that. And